You're listening to Thyroid Talk with Dr. Angela Mazza. Welcome! I'm Dr. Angela Mazza, a thyroid, endocrine, and metabolism specialist with an integrated practice in Central Florida. Today's topic is hair loss. As our listeners know, my goal for this podcast is to define and demystify the thyroid gland and thyroid-related medical conditions. By providing information in an easy-to-understand format, I hope to help patients better understand the ways in which their bodies work and help them thrive. I'm glad that Dawn Sheffield, my friend and co-host,
and patient,
is here with me for lucky episode 13.
And thanks so much for inviting me to join you again. I feel so lucky to be here. And I have to just right now give a shout out to two of our number one listeners. Well, number one to us anyway, Barbara and Rich.
Yeah, you guys totally make it worthwhile doing this podcast.
That's right.
As I mentioned, our episode today is about hair loss. This is a subject I get many questions about. We'll explore a number of possible reasons for hair loss and other hair issues in this episode, of course. But before we begin, we received a great question on a different subject that I want to respond to. A listener in Central Florida says, I'm in my 60s, a male. I find I'm not nearly as hungry as I was when I was younger, and I can't eat nearly as much as I could then, even if I want to. Yet my weight remains about the same. Also, I feel I have to work harder at losing weight now, harder than when I was younger, even though I'm not eating as much. Could this be related to metabolism, or just aging, or other causes? And how can I find out what's at work here? That is a really great question, and I wish there was like one single solitary way I could answer it.
Me too.
But metabolism in general is so multifactorial. When it comes to aging, though, probably the most important thing is as we age, our muscle mass decreases and it's replaced by fat, unfortunately.
So wrong.
It's not cool. It's just not cool.
No.
But the thing with muscle versus fat is muscle burns way more calories and energy than fat does. So really your metabolism is slowing down because there's less muscle. Ways to get around it are increasing your exercise, increasing resistance training, just keeping active is a great way of doing that. There's probably another factor at play here, which has to do with hormones. So as we age, also our hormones change. For guys, testosterone tends to decline a little bit. And for women, we go through menopause, which adds a whole nother variation into metabolism. And then finally, as we are older, our insulin resistance changes. Stress, we know we always talk about stress and its influence on insulin resistance. We have more stressors than we probably did when we were younger, or our bodies are not handling the stress as well. And when there's insulin resistance, our body is more apt to hold on to fat stores because insulin is a growth hormone and a storage hormone. So long answer to a short question, but it's probably multifactorial. Muscle mass being the major thing, and then hormones, including insulin, the next one. So finding out what's at work here, well, from an insulin standpoint, your doctor can order insulin levels and glucose levels. You can also order hormone levels. But the key thing is getting and staying active to maintain that muscle mass. So I hope I answered that question, listener. But it's not an easy answer.
No, but that was good. It really was helpful to understand. Gosh, it's complicated. Okay, that would be my answer.
Yeah.
It's complicated.
It's super complex.
It's very complex. Well, that was really well done. That was a good question, too. Well, as I said in our last episode on the benefits of exercise, seeking understanding by asking questions is crucial to understanding how our bodies work. So getting involved like that, asking questions, is a great way to do that.
Completely agree. I am grateful for these questions, and please keep them coming.
I'm grateful too, and I learn a lot actually from the questions, and it's good to know what listeners are concerned about. As you mentioned earlier, our topic today is hair loss, and I value hair. I greatly value hair, but I'm embarrassed to say I don't know that much about it, other than it did once send me to seek medical help. And I'll share more about that in a little bit. Maybe we could start with just a brief overview of what hair is.
Let's do. I think for many of us, hair is something we either want more of or less of. We kind of have a love-hate relationship with it. But as far as defining hair, well, it's made up of a tough protein called keratin, and keratin covers almost all of our body, except for, of course, our lips, the palms of our hands, and the soles of our feet. But we always tend to think first of the hair on our heads. Our hair actually serves very many important functions. It helps protect our bodies from harmful things, including the sun's UV rays. Body hair, like eyebrows, eyelashes, and nostril hair, keep foreign debris and dust from our eyes and nasal passages. Body hair helps to regulate our body temperature, and it's even an extension of our sense of touch. Your hair alone can even help identify you in terms of DNA. But what's important to our conversation today is this. Our hair is an external reflection of what's going on inside of our body. Healthy looking hair is usually a good sign of overall health. On the other hand, unhealthy hair changes may be a sign of something more serious than just needing a better conditioner.
I know, as you said, that you get lots and lots and lots of questions from your patients on the topic of hair. I'm curious about what their primary concerns are, and I'm guessing hair loss. And then my second guess is, maybe because this is an issue for me, hair dryness or breakage.
Well, far and away, the most common concerns for patients are hair loss and hair thinning. People get worried if their hair loss continues, they're going to be bald, and that really freaks them out. To the extent that some people will even collect their lost hair and bring it to the office, which not necessary, but I think that drives home the point that so many people are upset about it that they want to prove what's going on.
That's a good point. Having to, you know what? That's a really good point. Having to prove it.
Right. Fearful that someone won't believe them.
Yeah, I get that. I just thought of something for a different episode. That's really an important point. I'm glad you said that. Well, I have not brought my hair nor my hairbrush in yet. But the other day I did ask you to look at the absurdly dry, cracked skin inside my ear. Isn't that special? I was sorry that I did that later. Sorry about that. But I mean, it was actually bleeding on my way to your office. And we know dry skin can go along with Hashimoto's thyroiditis, and it was so dry. I really just needed someone qualified to acknowledge it. And I think that might be what's going on with the hair loss and the hairbrush, the demonstration. And by this, I mean, I think it's hard for patients to quantify certain problems, as in, how bad is bad?
Right.
Lost hair, for example, like how much is too much? I think we get scared and we don't know, and we want someone qualified to say, that's okay, it's not too much. But at the same time, we're terrified. A doctor might say, yep, that's way too much. Patients are on a razor's edge, I tell you. But looking in my bloody ear probably wasn't great for you either. I'm thinking in retrospect. So one of the things I know about hair from personal experience is how deeply affected it can be by our thyroid health, or by, I guess I should say, our lack of thyroid health. And I mentioned earlier that hair sent me to seek medical help, and here's why. I discovered that I had a thyroid problem entirely because I suddenly lost what I thought was a scary amount of hair. To me, it was like Halloween scary. I actually remember the day I stood up and I just happened to turn around and I saw what I thought was a frightening amount of hair on the back of my chair. It was so shocking. I made a doctor appointment right away. They did thyroid blood work, maybe other tests, I don't recall, and discovered I have underactive thyroid. So I started medicine right away.
Well, first off, Dawn, it's really interesting to me that you went to a doctor right away when you noticed significant hair loss, but not when your feet and ankles got super swollen. That time we were on vacation, remember that? Remember you mentioned
Yeah,
that before?
just vaguely. Yes, I remember it well. Previous episode. Well, here's the thing. You know what? People have priorities. And I do see how you might be puzzled by that, but I think it clearly demonstrates how very important hair is to some folks. And I figured, my ankles that would get resolved, but my hair was on the chair. I mean, there's no putting that back.
That sounds like a song, Hair on the Chair.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it does have a little right. We have to work on that on the side. But also to answer your question, I was not in vacation denial mode when the hair fell out. Vacation denial is a real thing. It's real.
It's a syndrome.
Speaking of which, is hair loss often the first sign a patient gets of thyroid problems? Or, rephrasing that, do you find that patients first seek thyroid help due to hair loss?
Hair loss can be one of the more common presenting symptoms of underlying thyroid issues, either hypothyroidism, that's underactive thyroid, or hyperthyroidism, that's overactive thyroid.
But why does thyroid trouble cause hair loss? I don't, obviously I don't understand the connection.
Well, before we dive into that, let's first talk about the hair cycle itself. And to be specific for our conversation, we're mainly talking about human scalp hair, the hair on our head. We have somewhere between 80,000 to 120,000 hairs on our scalp. And our hair does not grow continuously.
And I did not know that. I imagined it just chugging along 24/7.
Hair growth patterns are really interesting, really. Each and every hair follicle goes through a phase of growth, followed by a period of rest. The growth phase is known as the anagen phase. It's 2 to 6 years long. Hair grows at a rate of 1 centimeter per month. In inches, since I guess we don't think in terms of metric system, that's about...
Not yet. That's another episode.
That's about 4/10 of an inch each month. How long your hair can possibly be depends upon this anagen phase. Then there is a brief transitional phase followed by a rest phase. This period of rest is known as the telogen phase. It lasts from 2 to 4 months. During the rest phase, hair is shed and replaced by new hair. It is completely normal to lose about 50 to 100 hairs every day. And remember, if you have longer hair, this is going to look like a lot more on your bathroom floor or in your hairbrush. It is normal to have some ongoing hair loss, but this is usually balanced by new hair growth. And so many factors can affect these phases: hormones, drugs, toxins, stress, and even the seasons. It's important to note that when you see increased hair loss, this is due to factors that affect the telogen phase. These factors have already affected the hair follicle up to 4 months before you see the increased hair loss. So, getting back to thyroid hormone is important to normal hair growth, but too much or too little is not great for hair. The hair loss associated with thyroid imbalance is usually diffuse and involves the entire head, just not spotty areas. This is known as telogen effluvium. And please remember, this is not an overnight change. This is a result of months prior. So, for example, if you had a recent start of a thyroid hormone replacement or a change in your thyroid hormone replacement a week ago, and you started noticing hair loss now, or increased hair loss, it's not likely due to the recent change. Also, it's really kind of unusual for mild or subclinical hypothyroidism, hyperthyroidism to cause hair loss.
And by subclinical, does that mean it's a very mild case?
Yes. Subclinical refers to someone with slightly abnormal labs, but they're otherwise feeling well, without any clinical symptoms of thyroid dysfunction, either hypothyroid or hyperthyroid.
So, other than hair loss, as I experienced that day on the chair, can thyroid problems cause other hair-related problems?
Great question. As we have discussed in our previous episodes, the most common causes of thyroid issues are autoimmune related. As a reminder, autoimmune means our own immune system turns on our body, attacking normal cells as if they were invaders needing to be killed and swept away. It might attack skin cells, for example, possibly resulting in vitiligo. That's the loss of pigment cells that give our skin its color. The most common cause of hypothyroidism is Hashimoto thyroiditis. The most common cause of hyperthyroidism is Graves' disease. If a person has one autoimmune condition, he or she is more likely to develop but not always, another autoimmune condition. Alopecia areata is an autoimmune condition of hair loss. Alopecia means hair loss and areata means circular. So unlike telogen effluvium, which is diffuse, kind of sort of all over hair loss, alopecia areata causes more discrete or circular areas of hair loss. A lot of times this is temporary and does not progress, but unfortunately it can cause spots of baldness.
And with alopecia, is it true that one may lose not just scalp hair, but their body hair, including, for example, eyebrows or eyelashes?
Yeah, that can happen, but not always.
What about vitamins, minerals, or other supplements that might help either to prevent the hair loss or to restore lost or thinning hair?
Well, first, as always, I know I say this every time, consult your healthcare provider before adding or taking any new products or supplements. Even those that are applied topically, that means to your skin. Some products, even when applied only to the skin, can travel through the skin and into the body to be processed by your liver. That can be how they work, but that can also be a big problem depending upon your liver health, your other conditions, and other supplements or medications, natural or not, that you take. Because some topicals can pass through the skin, this is yet another reason we must never share medications. As I mentioned previously, even some natural products can affect you dangerously under certain conditions. By talking to your provider, he or she can advise you on what type of supplements or products you should try. Well, there are a number of supplements that aid in hair support and regrowth. When you take an oral supplement, it's absorbed into the bloodstream, where it nourishes all the cells, including your hair follicles. Just know that vitamins for hair growth work in more of an indirect process. There are great nutraceuticals for hair loss. Some of them are biotin, which is vitamin B7, as well as all the B vitamins, zinc, vitamin C, iron, folate, vitamin D, PABA, and bioflavonoids. You might want to also consider some herbals like green tea extract, grapeseed extract, pea shoot extract, and horsetail extract. My go-tos for hair are Ultra HNS and Hair Growth Plus, both from Douglas Laboratories. They're just great products. Full disclosure, I carry supplements by Douglas Laboratories in both my office and our online site. I would not make them available to patients nor take them myself if I didn't believe they were quality products. I even helped to develop a product they carry called Thyroid Essentials. It's one of the few thyroid supplements in the marketplace that does not contain iodine. You know how I always talk about
Yes, and that, but that's because
iodine.
it's important.
Every thyroid patient does not need iodine supplementation. In fact, some should not take it, but it can be hard to find thyroid support that doesn't contain it. Please remember, if you are taking biotin, that's B7, that's one of the B vitamins I mentioned, stop taking it for a few days before any thyroid function testing. Biotin can cause false changes in your lab values because they interfere with the lab assay. Assay just means how the lab test is performed.
Can hair loss that's due to thyroid trouble be recovered?
That's definite yes. Regrowth of hair is usually seen with a successful treatment of the underlying thyroid issues, whether it's hypothyroidism or hyperthyroidism. It may take several months, so please, folks, be patient.
Well, when hair loss is caused by thyroid troubles, do we generally lose only the hair on our scalp, or could that affect other areas of the body too?
Hair loss due to thyroid problems is usually noticed more on the scalp. I think it's because we notice it more easily. We look at it in the mirror every day.
Yep.
But one of the signs that is classic for hypothyroidism is loss of the lateral 1/3 of the eyebrows. And that actually brings me to a question we got online.
Oh,
Yeah, so I'm just gonna, if it's okay with you, I'm gonna mention
yeah,
this
do
question I
it.
got. Um, Hello, question regarding eyebrows. I noticed that they seem to be running off of my face, more so at the start of my brows versus the end. Will it continue to get worse over time? Right now, I'm just thankful for Elf Wow Brow. Well, thank you for that question. And that kind of refers to the lateral third of the eyebrow. It's kind of one of those typical presentations that's always quoted in the textbooks.
I was talking to someone and noticed that about a third of their eyebrows had thinned so much it looked as if that 1/3 had actually disappeared. Can that be purely a function of aging, or is it almost always related to thyroid or both?
Well, it can be a combination of both. When it is related to the thyroid, that tends to return to normal once the thyroid is returned to normal.
When you see partially missing eyebrows, but the person thinks their thyroid values are in the normal range, do you immediately think this patient needs advanced thyroid testing beyond the basic yearly blood work that they might otherwise get?
Yeah, this is where I would do a more thorough history and physical exam, as well dig into more thyroid testing.
And I wonder too if thyroid medications can have an undesirable impact on hair growth.
For hypothyroidism, too much thyroid hormone replacement or too little replacement can cause hair loss. Some people may show sensitivities to different types of thyroid hormone replacement, synthetic or natural. That is desiccated thyroid hormone. We've talked about that in the past. And that can manifest as hair loss. Again, it is important to note the timing. If it is the thyroid hormone replacement, it won't generally appear until a few months after the medication change. As far as anti-thyroid medication for hyperthyroidism, the same timeline holds true.
I just want to circle back for a minute when we were talking about hair loss being due to thyroid problems. And you said it's normally noticed more on the scalp and maybe because it's easier to notice there. Um, but what about severe thyroid disease? Could that potentially cause hair loss on different parts of the body in addition to the head?
Yeah, it actually can. I think
Wow.
that's a good point to bring up.
Okay.
Plus, I would like to add about our listener question. I've
Yeah.
never heard the term elf wow brow.
I think that's awesome.
That was great.
I never heard that
I'm going to
either,
start
but
using that.
I just love that. Yeah, I'm gonna have to write that down because I I think I have that. I possibly have that, and I would like to refer to it. I want to refer to things properly. That's my thing.
You do that.
I love that. That was great. So regarding thyroid problems causing dry skin on the scalp, for example, that seems like it could cause severe hair problems too. I'm imagining that cannot be good for the follicles. Do you suggest possible remedies for excessively dry scalp, or do you refer those patients to a dermatologist?
Well, dry skin is usually associated with hypothyroidism due to the effects on the endocrine glands that moisturize our skin. So, remedying the thyroid state is key, as well as avoiding any worsening agents or chemicals. Some hair treatments and chemicals available can be super harsh on the skin as well as the hair.
And you mentioned hair treatments and chemicals may be harsh, but I wonder if some shampoos might be harsh too. I think some ingredients, well, I mean, in addition to a person maybe having a sensitivity to an ingredient, but I think some ingredients might help to fix one skin problem while maybe making a dry scalp condition worse.
Absolutely.
A hairdresser, again, no easy answers sometimes. A hairdresser once told me that she used coconut oil on her scalp and skin. Is there a product applied to the skin that is topically that folks with very dry scalp might ask their provider about?
Well, coconut oil is a great moisturizer in general for our skin. And I'm not sure. My main concern with using that one on the scalp would be that it may weigh down the hair more, like causing tension on the follicle.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's something I wouldn't have thought of. I love coconut oil. Just, I'm not endorsing, not making any endorsements. Just saying, for me. Um, and I would never have considered that before. So a little bit earlier, just a minute ago, you used the term endocrine glands. What are they? I have never heard that term before.
Well, endocrine glands provide moisture to our skin. Those are our sweat glands and are found in the highest density in our heads, palms, and soles.
And endocrine sounds a lot nicer than sweat glands, but I never thought of them being in our scalp. That's so interesting. So, just thinking about hair, I have not had hair replacement surgery, but what if someone has? And what if they are on thyroid medication? Will their body retain the transplanted hair if their thyroid hormones are correctly balanced?
Most likely, yes. I've had patients have really great results with it. And I just want to note there are prescription medications that your doctor may suggest too. There's a number of them and they work in different ways. So, but there is a therapy that's also available known as platelet-rich plasma, or PRP. So basically how it works is after drawing your blood, your provider separates out the plasma portion. Then they inject this platelet-rich plasma into your scalp. So it's your own cells. And PRP treatment can help slow and increase hair growth.
Wow, I
It's pretty
never heard of
cool.
that.
Yeah, I've also had patients do really well with that.
Oh, slow hair loss. Okay, got it. That's really cool. It's wonderful to live now, I think. So many
Modern medicine.
exciting things. I imagine there are always exceptions, but should we assume that if a hair transplant patient is not on thyroid treatment, but they should be, is it safe to assume they may not be able to maintain the transplant or do well without the required medication?
That would be correct. Maintaining the new hair growth will be difficult if the thyroid is not optimal, which is super important. An appropriate treatment, which might include PRP, might also be undertaken to support and nourish hair growth.
And I want to mention right here that we have not forgotten about gray or graying hair. We're not covering it in this episode because it's a real big subject on its own,
Right.
and that will have to wait for a different time. But just wanted to let you know we didn't forget. As for hair loss, I think folks may just accept their hair loss as something to be expected and accept it. It's just a natural part of the aging process. But I think there can be reasons other than thyroid and age to cause the problem. For example, genetic factors or maybe hormonal changes in the body. What other factors might be related to hair loss?
Well, hair loss has so many possible causes. Let me kind of go through some of the most common ones. Well, we've all been dealing with COVID-19 for the past few years, but on top of everything, it can have a debilitating effect on hair.
Wow,
We usually see hair loss about 3 months after having COVID.
I did not know that.
Yeah, hair does tend to regrow back to baseline or its original state, but with time. So it's just something to watch out for.
Mm.
Nutritional deficiencies are big on hair, especially not getting enough iron or protein. Our genetics play somewhat of a part in hair loss. That can be, that's out of our control, unfortunately.
Mm.
Fungal infections of the scalp can cause hair loss. That's very treatable. Hairstyles that pull the hair back tight, braids, hair extensions, ponytails that are tight. Hair care that can cause damage due to processing, so like perms and bleaches. Hormone changes, like we see with pregnancy or menopause, big on the hair. There's medical treatments like chemotherapy and certain medicines that can affect our hair and cause hair loss. And a big one, I know, again, we always talk about stress, but stressful events like a big surgery or losing a loved one, that can also cause hair loss. So, note if you're going to have chemotherapy, you might want to talk to your team about potentially helpful like treatment options before you go into therapy to help prevent or minimize hair loss.
And why does getting older seem to have such a profound impact on our hair, or does it? Maybe this is a wrong perception.
Well, aging results in a decrease in the total number of hairs and the thickness of hair. This is called androgenic alopecia. Androgen means male hormone or testosterone. This type of hair loss is also called male pattern baldness. In this case, hair is lost in a well-defined pattern beginning above both temples.
Does thyroid trouble cause damage to the follicles so that new hair might not be able to grow in?
Kind of, because it affects that growth or telogen phase of the follicle. But the follicle itself is not damaged. Once the thyroid is back in balance, the follicle is able to resume its job.
No, I struggled mightily to avoid asking this question. I mean, I seriously.
I feel it coming on.
I tried not to ask it, but I failed. So here it is. Here it comes. Referring to episodes 8 and 9, can leaky gut impact hair health?
Dawn,
I'm bracing myself.
that would be absolutely 100% correct.
I'm so happy. it makes perfect sense. But I was
Full
still,
circle.
I saw full circle. I like that. I like full circle. And it makes perfect sense. But still, I was certain I was going to be wrong about it. I really, truly thought you'd say, Dawn, in that very calm voice, I know you love leaky gut references, but leaky gut is not involved with every single aspect of our lives. But now, see, sooner than later, I think we may prove that it is. It's right up
We
there.
may.
Right, you never know.
We should make like a little society about leaky gut.
Oh, wouldn't that be nice? Can the pen be really small though? We just really, I don't need anything ostentatious. Just something.
Just something, a little reminder.
Just a little, yeah. All right, we'll have to think about that. We have many things to develop and think about. Yeah, I like that. Now, to experiment on myself for this episode, as you know I love to do, I bought a metallic spidery looking gadget. That's a scalp stimulator.
Nice.
And I've been using it. It would be nice if I got a different one, I think. It's okay. There are different brands, many different types of these devices. I went cheap because I'm just starting my experiments.
Well, you don't want to like go full all
No,
out.
I don't want to go all out because this one might have done the trick.
They got a loan for us.
Yeah, I don't want to take any loan. No, but I don't know. If it was really good, maybe I would. The one I bought has a smaller number of spidery arms, less arms than maybe others have. They're not super strong. They're very thin, the little metal arms. Arms isn't quite the right word. It's a strange looking thing. Others may have more arms, some may have less. I'm not thrilled with the one I got because I wish it were not so weak. It just sort of tickles. Maybe that's the point, I don't know because I'm early in my experimenting. These arms are very thin, very flexible. If the arms were firmer and the metal thicker, I think it would give a better scratch. But then it occurred to me, scratching and gouging the scalp is not a good idea, not so healthy to break the skin.
Yeah, try and avoid that.
Yeah.
Then you have a whole nother problem.
Yeah, different problem right there. You try to fix one thing, something else happens. So this one has little rubber, but I will say this one has little rubber, I don't know, maybe plastic tips on these arms, prongs, whatever they are. So there's no gouging. I've also seen some battery powered devices.
Oh, dear God.
They roll around the scalp. I can't, I don't have one, never bought one, don't know anything about them. I was slightly concerned about this because, I didn't know if it might get tangled in my hair. I don't know. I hope not. And probably not. So beyond feeling great, does scalp stimulation or scalp massage actually help to encourage new hair growth?
Well, you know what? Yes, Dawn.
Shocking.
There have actually been studies that prove just this point. Scalp massage increases hair thickness by stretching the dermal papilla cells of the hair follicles.
Wow.
See, you knew this, right?
Wow. I wish I had my little spidery thing with me right now.
Well, so this in turn stimulates the follicles to produce thicker hair. It's also thought that a scalp massage may help dilate blood vessels beneath the skin, thereby encouraging hair growth. I'll provide citation information on that on show notes regarding the study.
And aren't you just glad I don't have that little? Wouldn't it just be odd if I just reached down and just started applying that to my head? That
I am glad.
Yeah, me too. I'm very glad I was able to filter that thought right out. Hey, but you know what? Here's the thing. We're talking about this information for this podcast. But I know something that might end up in the shows and show notes of other podcasts, and who knows where else. You have not brought this up, I think, because you're modest. So I'm just going to barge ahead like I do, barging ahead as usual. Another art and a medical art that you are engaged with right now is that you have just finished writing a book about thyroid health. I am so amazed by this.
Thank you, Dawn.
Oh, it's amazing. I have not mentioned it to anyone, so I'm mentioning it now. And is it premature to let it out in the open? Because if it is, I guess you'll be editing this right out.
Oh, well, gosh, no, not too early. Thank you so much for mentioning it.
Of course.
It's kind of been simmering on a back burner for such a long time. It's hard to believe it's about to be available.
Oh my gosh.
I am really thrilled to be able to share my passion for thyroid health with even more folks. At the moment, I believe it'll be available to order in January 2023. I trust you'll mention it again if I don't.
Oh, you know I will. You could not stop me. And the thing is that, well, I'm going to hold that thought for just a minute. I'm going to insert that here in just a minute. But first off, can you give us a sense of what sort of audience the book is written for and what your overall goal was in writing it?
Of course. Well, it's for both motivated patients and providers alike. So, I wrote it to provide research-based information, kind of like we talk about on our show, and offer an integrative approach to thyroid care with a special focus on autoimmune thyroid issues like Hashimoto thyroiditis and Graves' disease. So, appropriately, the title is
Appropriately enough, yeah.
Appropriately, title is Thyroid Talk: An Integrative Endocrinologist Guide to Optimal Thyroid Health. So when it's ready to order, we'll mention it here and in the show notes. I am just super happy about this.
Well, I think your fans and patients will all join me in being happy for you too. I've actually had the honor of seeing it in bits and bobs, pieces and parts, while working with it on this show. It's really impressive. I'm not just saying that. It was really an honor to get to utilize it. Your passion for this subject shows on every page. So it's been a really big secret to keep. And I just want to say the details you provide in it are really remarkable and very helpful.
Thank you. I sure put my heart into it, and I just hope it's well received.
I don't think you have a thing to worry about in that regard.
Well, thanks. We will keep everybody posted
Yes,
on this.
we will.
So thanks for mentioning that.
My pleasure.
All right. Well, listeners, thank you so much for sharing your time with us. I really hope this discussion was helpful. Let us know. In our next episode, we'll cover Epstein-Barr virus, or otherwise known as EBV, and the thyroid. It's a tight relationship. I wanted to do this podcast to provide life-saving education and encourage folks to see a doctor in time to prevent or minimize damage. That's deeply fulfilling. I enjoy helping folks understand how all aspects of their lives are tied to both thyroid and overall health. As always, my goal is to help us live more fulfilling lives by taking control of our health and thus feel our best. In fact, this is why I went into endocrinology. It's a medical art that combines science with the study of our lives and all that they encompass.
And as always, we hope our listeners will continue listening to Thyroid Talk with Dr. Angela Mazza. We have many more interesting episodes planned. We'll build on today's foundation and cover many topics we hope you'll find meaningful. And to recap just some of what we covered here, not necessarily in this order: what hair is made of, supplements for hair support, how hair can reflect our internal health, the hair growth cycle and what factors impact it, many possible reasons for hair loss. It's not just age-related. The functions scalp and body hair serve, even eyebrows have a job.
And the elf brow.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Again, I'm gonna
probably using that.
Someone might get a tattoo of that. That would be cool. And best of all, we learned that we can impact our thyroid health. As Dr. Mazza mentioned, in our next episode, number 14, we'll discuss the Epstein-Barr virus and thyroid, and that's going to be fascinating.
As always, we welcome your input. Please send your comments, show ideas, and questions to thyroidtalk.mazza@gmail.com. That's an email address, not a message board. Other listeners won't be reading your message on any sort of public forum. We may disclose your general location on air, city or town, for example, but we will not read your name nor your address on the show. We reserve the right to edit your input as necessary.
And stay in touch. Check out the YouTube channel at Dr. Angela Mazza, the website at Metabolic Center for Wellness, as well as Facebook and Instagram. For information on at least some of the supplements we discuss on the show, please visit the Wellness Store at metaboliccenterforwellness.com. Don't forget to ask your healthcare provider about any specific questions regarding your wellness. This podcast is meant for educational purposes only.